and welcome to another Optelec Enhanced Vision interview. So today I'm very happy to announce that I've been joined by Sight Service Gateshead, a local sight loss charity, and I'm being joined by Stephanie Cairns and Mike Sutton and Carol McAllister. So thank you very much for joining me.
You're welcome.
You're welcome.
So first of all, what I really want to ask about, for everybody who will be watching this, is what is Sight Service about as an organisation? So
Sight Service was formed in 1996, and it was originally called Northumbria Sight Service. And basically, we provide services to those living with visual impairment across Gateshead and South Tyneside. We've been really fortunate last year to have secured a 5-year contract with South Tyneside Council, and that's a sensory contract, so it covers hearing loss as well. And we've actually got a worker who is working with us. She works for Action on Hearing Loss, and we work very closely with Rebecca in terms of furnishing people who are living with dual sensory loss. We don't have the sensory contract in Gateshead, but we work very, very closely with their sensory impaired worker too, Sean Golden, and we provide services across both areas to help people with sight loss live as independently as they possibly can. So that could be anything from aids and adaptations. The team that I manage, the enablement team, provide home assessments for people. So we'll go into people's homes, we'll look at how they're living, what they might be struggling with. We've also got Mike, who's the rehab manager, so he does his rehab input in terms of people's mobility. The enablement team provide pieces of equipment across both areas. We provide a support plan for people. So we very much go into their daily lives and what matters to them. And that's one of the questions that was part of our assessment document that we revamped last year, because in actual fact, it's different for everybody. There's no one size fits all. So people have very much things that matter to them. And that's what the enablement team do. We write a support plan. It has outcomes. We review it within 6 weeks to make sure those outcomes have been met. We also have a vision support project, and that's a lottery funded project. And our vision support team are all about trying to get people engaged in activities within the community. So it might be that they want to rejoin a group that they haven't been able to go to. So our workers will support them for 6 to 8 weeks to help them facilitate going to groups, being involved in the community. And that's been a really successful project in terms of getting people back into using local services within their community. And that's kind of the sort of basis of the enablement team and what we actually try and achieve. But in terms of organisationally, we're all about promoting independence within the sight loss community.
yes, of course, and that is the vitally important aspect of it as well. Everything is on that side. So that's interesting. So from a point of view for you, Mike, as a rehab, can you expand a little bit more on that role as well?
Certainly. I mean, I've always thought rehabilitation is kind of an ambiguous word, and it's like a lot of people are just saying, well, hang on a minute, what is rehabilitation? Why do I need a rehabilitation? So I tend to say to people, it's doing things differently. So to focus on what Carol says with regards to independence, it could be that one of the favourite things our clients like to do during the day is make a cup of tea. Now, if they're making that cup of tea and all of a sudden they're scalding themselves or overflowing that mug, I would then come in and think, well, pardon the pun, have you ever looked at it differently, looked at it from a different point of view? So you're going in, you're going into people's houses and just thinking, well, whatever they used to do, it's like, well, yeah, okay, but can you do it differently? So it's judging if they can do it differently, but then taking that on board as well. So getting back to the cup of tea, it could be like, well, tell you what we'll do is instead of doing it on the bench where it could spill, we'll do it in the draining board. So if it does spill, it goes straight in the sink. And a lot of the time people will say, never thought of that before. Well, I've never thought of that before until somebody told me what to do. And a lot of the information I always say about rehab, it's come from people who are visually impaired. So that's kind of where my training developed. It's all these people who said, well, we're all trying these things differently, but nobody puts that point across to anybody else, which is my role. In a way, it's passing on that information. So whether or not it's, again, what Karen says about being independent in your own home, making cups of tea, dressing yourself, reading the paper, watching television. I could come in there and say, well, look, there's different ways of doing things there. And then the main focus is people's independence outside, their mobility outside. So if ever you've seen anybody using a long cane, a white long cane, more often than not, a rehabilitation worker for people who are visually impaired come in and says, well, you can use it like this, you can use it like that. It's not just a case of going on somebody's website and buying a cane. It's best to have a word with a rehabilitation worker who will show you lots of different hits, not just with the cane, but it might just be that, you know, a person has come to me and says, well, I used to go to shops, but now it's dangerous. Right. How many streets did you used to cross? One. Well, have you thought about crossing 2 streets, which are a lot safer? It's a little bit longer. Or you can use your long cane, or you can use your symbol cane as well. So again, just getting back to that rehabilitation is just doing things differently and just getting that people to take that on board.
Absolutely, it is. I come across it, and I think very often the same. It is like forest for the trees. It is just showing them a different way of doing the same thing, or trying to do the same thing, because it is important, vitally important, that people just don't assume, okay, I've lost that function and I'm never going to get it back again. We know that is not the case. It just, you may have to learn it in a different way, or relearn it in a different way.
Yeah, them in a different direction. Yeah,
absolutely. And like you say, you can only do that by word of mouth, by hearing from other people about that, which is why, I've learned it's much more, not by just the theory side, but actually, going to see people and finding out. So, that's interesting on that side. So, Stephanie, from your point of view and your role there, can you tell us a little bit more about what you do there?
Yep. So I'm an optometrist and I'm clinical lead for Sight Service. So one of the sections within the Sight Service umbrella of what we actually offer a low vision service. And a low vision service is an optometry-led service where people can come and find out more about their eyesight and the vision loss that's causing them the problems, but also to try and find alternative ways of doing things, a little bit along the lines of what Mike does, but mine's more orientated around using magnification, whether that be magnifiers that they actually use to help them read, or potentially something like a telescope for seeing things further away. There's a whole range of different ways that we can help with magnification, and one of the main things about going to a low vision service is that you actually have that opportunity to try those out and try and find out which is the best ones for yourself. Sight Service has a very unusual setup because we've got a community-based low vision service, so it's separate from the hospital, but it's integrated with rehabilitation and the enablement service that Carol was talking about. So it's very much about the magnification, and using magnifiers or various other aids is again there to help promote independence, and it's another way of doing the same tasks, but by using a magnifier or whatever, because occasionally reading glasses aren't the answer. Sometimes, however, reading glasses are the answer, and it's just lighting that people actually need, and we do spend a lot of time demonstrating lighting and showing different techniques with that sort of thing. So it can be a real range of issues and concerns that we can deal with, but a lot of it is around maximising what they are seeing rather than dwelling too much on what they're not seeing. Whereas sometimes, specifically within the hospital service, when there's been a lot of kind of concerns about the eyesight changing and not being able to necessarily fix it as people would like it to happen, the role of a low vision service is almost the opposite to that. It's actually to try and build their confidence back up again, to actually show, look, well, you may not be able to do this thing, but actually you can do all these other things as well if you just change things slightly. So there is a lot of it is I'm not sure counselling is the right word, but there is definitely a lot of reassurance and confidence building about coming in and speaking to a trained optician who fully understands their eyesight concerns, but then also can provide some suggestions and ideas and hopefully send them home with equipment as well, which is going to help.
Absolutely. And again, that is, like you pointed out, that is one of the fundamental differences between a society providing a service or just purely an NHS low vision clinic. The time restraints that they're under use not under the same regimental constraints, and you obviously, as you say, you can offer more other items like lighting, like anti-glare shields and stuff like that, where not all hospitals, some do, absolutely, but not all hospitals do. So, yeah, I think it's vitally important that you can do that.
Sorry, Paul. The other thing is because we work integrated with rehab and enablement, and because we actually not excluding COVID, we normally work within the same building. Yes. Referring on to between services is actually much more coherent, and I can actually have a conversation with somebody else and explain what I'm thinking and say, well, what do you think? Have you got any other suggestions? There's a lot of input around helping with benefit support and various other things because of the optometry input can help because I can actually clarify what someone's vision actually is, whereas sometimes our referrals in can be a little bit vague even when they've come via the hospital. Having optometry as part of the bigger picture is really, really beneficial both to our clients that we're supporting, but also to the professional staff that were within our team. And it is very unique. Certainly within the Northeast, we don't have anything else going on like this. And there's very few services across the country working like this. So it is something that we really ought to be shouting about, and that's hopefully.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's very proud to do that. So it is obviously quite unique as well. So that's useful on that side. So regarding we touched upon the elephant in the room there, the coronavirus situation. Now, obviously, even from our point of view, it's changed how we operate massively, and I've no doubt exactly the same for you guys. So how has COVID-19 affected you on a day-to-day basis, both as an organisation and also as individuals?
I moved house just before lockdown, so for me, you'll be able to see the background. We're in the middle of renovating a house, and that's just been an absolute nightmare for us because we've got every wall stripped back, there's no carpets on the floor. So personally for me, it's meant all of that stuff had to go on hold. We can't get plasters because plasters don't have any plaster. It's just the simplest of things for me. But in terms of the services, we decided way at the beginning of lockdown that we were going to keep in touch with our most vulnerable clients. So people who were living on their own, that's where we started. And we were making welfare calls, and the team have done over 3,500 calls in lockdown.
Oh, right. Okay.
Keeping in regular contact with people. We sorted out food parcels at the beginning. We're a bit slow to kind of get to people from the councils, so we facilitated that. We're working with other local charities and organisations within both areas to make sure that people are getting a whole service rather than a bit sporadic here and a bit there. The team haven't obviously been able to do face to face, so we can't visit people in their own homes. We're all working from home, and that's been challenging because we're such a close team, and we do a lot of what I would call informal case conferencing every day. And Stephanie's right, if one of us has got an issue, we can just sort of go and talk to somebody else about it. So that's been a challenge, and my phone usually never stops ringing because somebody's always saying, what about this? And we do that in a really informal way within the office, and I don't think we'd kind of realised how much we depend on it when we're doing exactly what Stephanie said. We're case conference and we're sharing information. So the team have still been taking referrals. We're triaging over the phone, and Stephanie and I, way at the beginning of lockdown, put together sort of an emergency kit, if you like, for people that couldn't come through low vision. We put together, it has a magnifying lamp, handheld magnifier, anti-glares if they were needed, and Stephanie went through, gave us the advice that we needed to make sure that those people got something rather than nothing. And we're just at the point now where Stephanie and Mike are going to be reviewing that work that was done then to see. The girls checked in after 6 weeks. People seem to be relatively happy, but we're now at the point where we're starting the low vision remotely. If people are able to do that. And I think it's really important that we still do that work because people's eye appointments have gone on hold. Stephanie's taken various phone calls from people who possibly just needed that little bit of reassurance that they weren't going to go to their eye clinic appointment. That obviously freaked people out a little bit. And Stephanie's been brilliant at reassuring more than one client that talk things through with them, give them that reassurance. If we have had to do anything in terms of equipment, we've been able to discuss that together. We'll do Zoom phone calls. It's just a whole new different way of working. And I think if we'd been in this situation 10 or 15 years ago, we wouldn't have been able to do what we're able to do now because of technology.
Yeah, absolutely. I 100% agree with you on that one. 10 years ago, the connections wouldn't have been stable enough to get two people, and never mind a group of people on. So that's interesting. It's interesting that Stephanie, you and Carol, you both created the kit, the basics there, because That's the first time I've heard that. So again, that's another unique service. I'm not aware of anything like that happening anywhere else in the country.
Right. Well, we had about 15 people, so it's not a huge amount of people compared to some services. We had about 15 people who were either had appointments booked for their very first low vision appointment with us,
Okay.
or were about to be booked in. That was kind of how they were, and they were the ones that we ended up having to cancel straight away. We realised very quickly, identified very quickly, that our client base, the average age is around 80. So most of our clients are fit into the vulnerable category, even without the fact that some of them may actually have had other health conditions. So I was quite keen for us to be very careful around face-to-face appointments, and we'd already started thinking we were going to have to stop those before actual lockdown started. So I went through all those referrals and realised that the majority of them actually, their level of vision was at a level where a low-powered hand magnifier was worth a try. And it went out with some large print instructions. I did some YouTube videos on how to use things, so I'm not sure whether they been picked up or not, but there were bits and pieces done to go alongside the kit, rather than just giving them a whole load of information. And then, as I say, Carol's team followed that up as well. So now myself and Mike are going through our people that we would normally be reviewing within low vision.
Yes.
So they were due to see us within the sort of the March, April onwards period. And the reason I'm in the office today is because we've been started ringing everybody. Now it's time consuming. We're not going to ring everybody straight away, but the plan is to get through the list of people and see how many of those we need some help at the moment. A bit like what Carol's already been doing with some of the other clients we support.
Okay.
So some of those we can just do by providing new magnifiers remotely, fixing things, trying something different but doing it remotely. Some of those I'm actually going to do a remote assessment, which I know some of the other services have already put into place, but we're planning to start those fairly shortly as well. That's going to be a little bit more of a lengthy discussion over the phone, but alongside sort of reading charts, various other bits and pieces that have been sent out in advance, and then I'm going to ring them back and see if we can get a better idea how they're actually managing with the piece of equipment they've either already got or possibly something I've already supplied sort of ahead of this, depending upon the conversation I've had with them. And then there's going to be a number of people who this isn't going to work for, and we're hopefully going to prioritise those for when we're back up running doing face-to-face appointments. But unfortunately, at the moment, we can't really say exactly when that's going to be.
No, I was just going to say that is the unknown factor with it all. And again, I without naming any names, I speak to a lot of rehab officers and teams from other charities, and everyone is doing it very slightly different. They're all trying to do their best to provide some form of service and support to their client base, and some are doing more than other ones, but it is a bit like the old postcode lottery thing. It depends on where you are. So the fact that you guys, and I do find that particular thing very interesting, that you, in the early stages, you already identified, as you said, not a massive amount, 15 or so, clients who really needed help now, and because of their levels of magnification requirements, that you were able to send out like a reading chart, and even just a 3 or 4 times magnifier, maybe a task lamp or whatever it is, just to get them going. Because again, whether you realise it or not, that is something the NHS, certain areas, again, without naming anyone, but certain areas of the country are now just starting to provide that service, that remote assessment service. So again, congratulations to you guys for thinking of it 3+ months ago on that side.
But I'd say one of the benefits we have is that we do have this so there's the clinical side of things, but majority of these particular people we're talking about had just come through the hospital service, so we already had some basic clinical information. Unfortunately, we also know that if it's taken them 5 years to get through the hospital service, they probably could have done with this help 5 years ago. And I didn't really want them waiting any longer if we could provide some help, even if it wasn't the full amount of help at that point. So that was sort of where we were coming from this. But we do find that a lot of the time that most people need lighting advice, and it's the lighting and providing that lighting, whether it be daylight bulbs for the ceiling or an actual lamp, actually can make a huge benefit to a lot of people regardless of whether they need magnifiers as well.
Okay.
So, but having that my side of in conversation along with Carol's side from a social servicey background and also Mike's input, it's that joined up conversation and thinking about the whole person rather than just thinking about whether it's a magnifier.
Yeah. You're not talking about one aspect. You're talking about the whole thing. So for Mike, for you then, as again leading back on from the lighting side and you being forced to work remotely yourself on this one, how have you found your caseload? I mean, how easy have you found it to try and support these people over the phone? Because that's the only option you've had, really, apart from maybe the odd Zoom one. But I know from my experience, majority of my clients don't have the abilities of ways or means to even use or web broadcasting and stuff. So how have you found it?
I mean, the difficult thing is, and from what Carol and Stephanie and even yourself have been saying, is it kind of reflects on me as well, because I'm kind of, it makes sense, I'm a 3D person. So I cannot speak to somebody over the phone. To me, that's 2D. You need to speak to them face to face. But because of Sight Services background, we can even speak over the phone in 3D. And it's like taking that description, taking that instruction a little bit further, because we know how to describe things. So yeah, it is frustrating for me to try and talk to somebody over the phone and trying to talk rehab over the phone. There's no way I can go out. I cannot go out and I cannot do long cane training with somebody. You know, I've got to be with them. I've got to be close to them. You know, it's their permission to say, well, look, I'm going to take your cane off you and show you what to do. And, you know, you put your hands where my hands are, so to speak, on the cane. So it's all about looking at that. And a lot of, before this happened, I'm kind of the only rehab and Sight Service now, and I need that backup. I've been looking at doing task sheets for people in large print.
Yeah.
We're kind of doing the task sheet in a way I'm describing it to them if I was there in the same room. So when Stephanie talks about low vision and if people have problems, because we can't see them face to face, I'm hoping these sheets, when they get sent out, if they can work with them or they can work with somebody who can talk it through with them, they might get a little few hints and tips as what they would if they came into clinic. So again, but you know, you said, Paul, you've spoken to the rehabs, and rehabs are doing different things. Me, speaking with somebody, going out to see somebody, that's kind of my cocaine, so to speak. I get, you know, like you see them and you come out and you're happy and you've helped them. So that's missing a little bit. But in some respects, going back to what Carol said about the 3,500 her team have rang, you know, a lot of that boost, so to speak, is coming from them as well. So even occasionally when I've spoken to somebody over the phone, they've said, you know, you've made my day just ringing me up. And it's not until you sit at home yourself, i.e. me, and you realise that during the day you've never had any contact other than over the telephone. Yeah. So it's bringing that into play as well. It's bringing that communication. So yes, I'm missing it, but in some ways, Sight Service are trying to make as much contact as we can to fulfil that need.
You've clearly worked around a lot of the problems and found solutions for them, which is all anybody can ask anybody to do. And I agree with you. I find personally trying to help and support somebody over the phone, it doesn't matter if they're down the road or 300 miles away, it's still the same problem. Yes, it's taken longer. The telephone calls take longer naturally. Some of them can be, from my personal point of view, over an hour long just to try and help somebody on the phone. But absolutely, and again, I've said this to Stephanie before, personally speaking, I still get a buzz from helping people and from finding out them saying, you know what, that really helped me, thank you very much. Yep, great, that's what it's all about. I'm more than happy on that. So it's nice to see, as the organisation, even though you, along with everybody else, including ourselves, it's been a struggle, it's been a learning curve. Actually, in many ways, it's broadened all our horizons.
I mean, at the end of the day, you hear this phrase, a new normal. Yeah. Well, I think Sight Service are taking on board there's going to be a new normal when everybody's back to work.
Well, and that kind of leads me on, really, to the next question of the future. You know, we're all working differently. I'm not a fan of this almost governmental term, the new norm. I get it, I understand it, but But yeah, we are, one for a better word, we are going to have to apply ourselves differently with PPE when we do finally are able to go back into people's homes. So from the organisation side, is how are you going to move forward on that one? Have you got any ideas? Obviously, you've already talked about some of the ideas of what you've been doing, but how is the organisation going to change for the future?
I know that one of the team, Karen, who works for the Vision Support Project, once we're able to be back sort of to semi-normal working, she's very keen, and her and her support worker are going to make some instructional videos in terms of digital stuff for people. So we've got a meeting next week with the council in South Tyneside about equipment, and they've got an assistive technology team within South Tyneside Council, and they're very, very keen to provide digital equipment for people. So it might be an Alexa, might be a tablet, it could be an electronic magnifier. We're just not sure. We're going to nail that down next week. And I think for us, I know the team, like Mike says, we're kind of missing that face-to-face contact with the clients, because the enablement team very much, they're very hands-on. They need to be able to go and see people in houses. That's what they do. So they're all missing that side of it. And certainly it is going to have to be different when we go back. I think there'll be a lot more stuff done remotely to begin with. One of the things we are looking into at the moment is delivering the Living Well with Sight Loss course remotely. Now, like you said before, Paul, the number of our clients who actually have access to digital stuff is so small, because, as Stephanie said, most of them are over 80. We're looking at some kind of teleconferencing. I'm not a lover of teleconferencing. I think it's always difficult to know when you need to speak, who's talking. I think it's really tricky. And also bearing in mind that a lot of our clients have hearing loss too. So that's going to definitely present us with a challenge, but we're looking at all the angles at the moment as to how we can rise to those challenges. I think Stephanie said before, we've got a real sort of whole system approach to it, and we're always trying to look for ways that we can work together as a team across what we do. And yeah, I just think moving forward, a lot of it's going to have to be digital, a lot of it's going to be done remotely until we do get back to whatever normal working looks like.
Yeah, absolutely. No, I fully agree with you. And from obviously Stephanie, even from your other roles in optometry, you've been more than aware what's happening in your average daily practice on how they've had to change.
Well, yes,
which has been massive with limitations on the amount of people you can have in each practice and the PPE side of it and all that. So yeah.
But yesterday I spent a day in normal community practice and an optician's in full PPE, so I'm now well versed in this. It's not quite as daunting as it originally seemed, but it is hard work, particularly in the heat we had yesterday. And actually the fact we need longer appointments so that we can clean down in between people, actually, to be honest, it's really hard doing it in full PPE. We need longer appointments just to literally have a breather and to just kind of manage, because it isn't the same as how we would normally work. There's a lot of, it's a steep learning curve, along with a lot of the other things that have happened through COVID that we've had to learn how to change, like Zooming and all the rest of it. But yeah, working with this different, very strict hygiene, stricter, we already have strict hygiene, but it's obviously stricter now with COVID, has introduced a massive change to how normal opticians are working. And at some point we will need to bring that into the low vision service, and we are going to need to go back to doing face-to-face. One of the reasons that we've managed so well is that actually our Sight Service team has so much experience, but we only gained that experience by actually working directly with our clients or patients on a regular basis over the years. And you couldn't just come in and start doing this remotely. And I'm assuming that's the same for other societies and services across the country, is that they're only managing to do what they've been doing because of the experiences built up through the traditional method. So whatever we do now is not a replacement for traditionally seeing people coming in. And certainly even the people that we initially gave them an initial starter pack, it is just that, it's a starter pack, and we will hopefully be able to see them at some point to run through things and just see if there's anything else that we can offer. So, but that's really, really important. I think there will be an element of being able to continue remote. I think we may do some of our review appointments might end up being more telephone type systems. So far, some of them have been successful and maybe not others, but that's still a bit of a work in progress how that's going to work out. But from a new patient, for a new client to Sight Service point of view, I think in the long run I'd much prefer them to be coming in so that we could just get a more accurate clinical overview. And then decide moving forward how we would do that bit for moving forward. But obviously that's all dependent on what happens with COVID at the moment.
Absolutely.
Our area, Gateshead, South Tyneside, Sunderland, has been quite badly hit with COVID, and there's still quite a high numbers. So we're not particularly wanting to rush that back, until we know it's going to be
absolutely.
Okay.
No, I totally agree. It has to be taken on a geographical location, and I know for a fact that certain areas are still above where we ideally should be with these infection numbers on that side. So I totally understand that. But it's interesting that you mentioned the things like the videos, because again that's something that we've been doing again for the last few months. But it has actually had a really positive effect, because people, and I didn't think it would happen, but people are watching them, people are commenting on them, and ultimately moving forward, I think we'll continue that in some way. Clearly, it's still a face-to-face type of business, but certainly by having this material available to view online doesn't do any harm.
I think one of the other things that's highlighted for us as well, Paul, is that those welfare calls that the team have been making, people want them to continue. They don't want them to stop when lockdown's over, when they go back to normal working. So it's kind of opened up an avenue for us to keep in regular contact with them, and it's something that we're looking for funding for, because I think in terms of it's reduced people's isolation just having a phone call. It's also promoted their health and well-being in terms of emotionally, because a lot of them do live alone, and you're right in what you said before. It might be that that's the only voice they've heard, that person making the phone call, and the feedback we've had has been phenomenal, and it's been really good for the team, because it's kind of replaced what they would normally do, but they're getting such good feedback that it's really validated the fact that we've done those calls and we have reduced people's isolation even though they're in lockdown. So that's been a real positive outcome for our team.
Excellent. So
I mean, I've heard as well that these calls, they're not just 5-minute calls.
Yes.
They're like half an hour. Now, if you think, we've got somebody ringing down people doing that, you're only talking about 6 or 7 phone calls a day.
Absolutely.
Whereas really, come that, and what Carol's saying is by the time we get back to, hopefully, the new normal, it'll be a case of getting volunteers on board and make these phone calls. So then a half an hour and an hour is what they want and what they can get. Whereas, obviously, Carol's team, our colleagues, are making these phone calls, and they need to try and get a few done during the day, but there's only like half a dozen getting done during the day. So that's going to be expanded upon. There
is sadly still for all of us only so many hours in a day to do that. And absolutely, I totally agree. Many support calls can take an hour and a half. And as well as I do, you can't rush them under any circumstances. You've got to take the time to do that and let them end the call when they want to. And it is amazing. You could 3 or 4 calls a day, and you're locked up. So
we do hear the comment as well when people are ringing. You were supposed to call me yesterday.
Yes.
And it's just like, but people need that conformity. They need that routine all the time. Whereas,
again, but the whole thing is, it's such an unusual time for us all. None of us have been through this. None of us have had anything remotely like this. So it's been a learning curve for everybody. We can't look to a previous time and say, oh, we'll just do that again. We will be able to now moving forward, but we haven't had that backstop. So we've all had to learn and hopefully more humanise that. And I actually, from our point of view, I think that's one of the biggest benefits, is that in a weird way, the tech has allowed us to connect more to organisations, and more importantly to individuals. So it's something we want to continue. Again, I don't know how we'll do that in the long term and what we can allocate to that, but we certainly do want to keep up the this new way of doing things. And the fact that you guys are clearly doing it as well and have already been doing it is a compliment, is a great thing to have from your organisation's point of view. interview. So
Can I just clarify one thing, Paul? Although Stephanie says we've got years and years of experience, the three were only started when we're about 10. So we're all in our 30s now, okay? Just thought I'd clarify that for you.
Yeah. I always say it's not the age, it's the mileage.
Definitely. You're doing plenty of mileage at the minute, so.
Yeah. But no, it's been really insightful. I really do appreciate everyone's time today to talk a little bit more about what you do. I think it's vitally important that we get this sort of information across nationally, so as many different people from as many different backgrounds can see this, because I think a lot of people feed off this type of information, and even in the ideas of thinking, well, that's something maybe we should be doing, or we should have done on that side. And that's not a slight at anybody else's ways of doing things, because, like we said, everyone does it differently. But I think it's just really useful to get this out there for people to see. So I really appreciate your time today, guys. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
And obviously, what we'll do is we'll put all the links, etc., to the organisation website, telephone numbers, with our broadcast anyway. So thank you very much.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye.